Good evening, everyone. Ellen Sutter of ESP Presents and ESP Book Chats, where we bring page turners your way. This is our part three with author Timothy. I want to call him this. I'm trying to mix this character up in there. I love it. I love this character. And Timothy Kabel, and we're talking about the sea change of Dr. Abernathy. Um, Timothy, you can come on out. Hello,
Hello.
can you hear me? You can hear me well?
Yes, can you hear me?
Yes, I can. This is part three. And when we last talked about, but first I'll let you give them the backdrop of yourself and a little bit about the book. And this is day three, but some may not have known why the title is such. So your name, backdrop of the book, and why the title.
Sure. My name Timothy Kabel. I was a supervisor and social worker with the Department of Children and Families in Connecticut for over 30 years. And I've written, this is my second published novel. And, I always wanted to write, and I started a few years back, published my first one, A Resurrection in Bonner's Ferry in 2021, and now this one, The Sea Change of Dr. Abernathy. And why it's called that, a sea change is a significant change. It's a huge change that someone or something undergoes. And it comes from Shakespeare. I believe it's The Tempest. When one of the characters drowns in the sea, and his daughter sees him when they pull him out, and she talks about how the sea has changed him completely from how he was before. Um, so in this book, Dr. Abernathy doesn't drown, but he undergoes a huge change in his life. You're
I'm
mute.
sorry, I'm here. And that's where we are. The last time we stopped off on part two, we was talking about Dr. Abernathy getting his diagnosis from Dr. Tidrow. And also he was going to reconcile with his family. And now we moved on closer to him now talking about his book, what he want to do before his end, or he expires, as he say sometimes. And so you were talking about leadership. I was shocked to see these two leaders that's in there. So from your perspective as an author, viewing through the lens of Dr. Abernathy, and when he talks about leadership, tell us from that aspect.
Sure. Dr. Abernathy is a very accomplished writer. He is he's won the Pulitzer Prize for his one of his books. He's written 4 books. Um, the first was on it was called Waging War, and he took the teaching of Karl von Clausewitz, the military philosopher and historian, and applied it to different battles throughout history. Then he wrote other books, and now he is at a stage. Well, before his diagnosis, he had already been working on this book. Now that he was going to do once he's retired, he was going to finish it off, and it's called "At the Forefront: Essays on Leadership." Now, his other ones were strictly historical, more or less biographies or things of that nature, or of an applied military history. This one are his essays, and there is a certain amount of historical research that he has to do, but he takes, I believe, a total of, if I can recall, totally 33
Mm-hmm.
different characters from history, and from not just politics or military history, but from world people who were significant in their roles as leaders.
Mm-hmm.
And he writes essays on leadership, and I basically I remembered um, years ago. I don't remember the exact title. I have a copy of it somewhere. Richard Nixon, after he was no longer president wrote a book about leadership, and he chose different people in history and talked about their style of leadership. And in this book, it's sort of a similar thing. Dr. Abernathy takes figures from history and he analyzes their leadership ability and describes what they did and how they did it. But he's very clear. They don't all have to be political leaders. They don't all have to be, uh, presidents or generals or things like that. And they don't have to be good people
That's where
because
I want to start right there, but you can finish that, but you're
he
bringing me
writes
right
about
into the
some
point.
people who are not good people, but they were leaders because there were people in history who led other people to do many terrible things, but they had leadership ability.
Yes, that's you put
They
me right
didn't
where I want. True, true. Say that last part. I think I
they didn't
kind of
apply it in the right way, perhaps, but they had the leadership ability. And
awesome.
that's the point that he makes. He's not saying that Hitler was a great guy. He's not saying that at all. But he talks about the mechanisms that Hitler used to become, the leader of Nazi Germany and how he had so many people following him. He didn't have, it wasn't that everybody said, hey, this guy's a crackpot. We're not going to listen to him. You know, there was something there. And that's what Dr. Abernathy is trying to draw out.
I like the way you did that because that's specific. When I looked at that, you talked about, and I'm going to read some of the quote as you said when he wrote it. He said, evil person could be just as effective, kind, and benevolent individual, nor was it a statement or whether the subject of his essay were of good and evil. And the two he used that shocked me was, like you said, Hitler and Jim Jones.
Yeah.
So I never viewed that through the lens of Dr. Abernathy, as he said. So we know Hitler, his leadership, he ruled everything. And I'm not, like you say, into the politics and all that, but he did have people under him and that followed his leadership. Let's start with him. And you did just a glimpse of him. What, through the lens of Abernathy, to choose Hitler, and we all know what he had, what he
Right.
did. So let's view that leadership. You gave us a glimpse, quality, or what he has, and outside of being an evil person, how they can lead.
Right. Well, and again, this is going to sound bad, but a lot of leadership is a certain level of manipulation.
Mm-hmm.
And even a good person who leads in the right way has to convince people to do, whatever it is they want them to do. If it's a good thing, you're sort of convincing them of your position and that it's a good thing to follow. Someone
Mm-hmm.
like Hitler preyed upon the fact that after World War One, Germany was really put upon by the other nations. Um, I forget the name of the British Prime Minister said after World War One, it might have been Neville, that they were going to squeeze the Germans so hard and so tightly that their pips would squeak. And that's where pipsqueak comes from. And the pips are the golden buttons on their uniform. So they were going to squeeze them so tightly that you would hear them squeaking from their buttons.
Wow.
And as a result of that, because they went into a economic depression and people were suffering. Hitler took advantage of that and got people to come behind him out of this sadness, resentment, hostility, whatever. He preyed upon all that and he manipulated it so that people would follow him. And, he talks about people in the book that were good, leaders. He talks about Martin Luther King and other people like that who led for different reasons, but some of the things that they did were similar. They inspired people to follow their cause, or in the case of a politician, to elect them, or he even had Vince Lombardi in there as a football coach to inspire his players. He had the Native American chief, Crazy Horse, is one of the people. And when you read some of the things that Crazy Horse said, basically he said, we don't inherit nature or the land from our parents, we hold it for our children. So he was very
Mm.
much, he would have fit perfectly with the conservation movement. And so Lowell Abernathy takes these various people, and
You have another one. You have another one, and I'm going to resetting. And thank you. I am Stacy, and thank you for saying that. She's a great interview. I am Stacy. You have to look out for her as well. Thank you for coming here. I am Stacy, and Timothy Kabel is our author tonight. We're talking about the seed change of Dr. Abernathy, and one thing that in the book, Dr. Abernathy is talking about leadership, and he shows some examples of people don't necessarily have to be good people, but their leadership can be, somewhat of someone folks will follow. Another one you talked about was Jim Jones. Now I remember that back in the day, his leadership, people was so almost looked to him as if he were a god. The most thing I remember because I was younger is that he had them all to take a certain communion or whatever you want, and they believed at that moment. So he took all of those people down,
right.
whatever was in there. So let's look at that leadership of Jim Jones.
Well, he was even able to convince elected officials in the United States to not to drink the Kool-Aid, but to follow him and think that he was this wonderful leader. But he wasn't. He was a horrible person. But he convinced, he had Jonestown, he had all those the folks who followed him and ultimately sacrificed their lives for him. And but there was something there that, that's a pretty big thing, to make all these people follow you to the point that they're willing to die.
Mm-hmm.
And, I'm not saying, and neither is Dr. Abernathy, that Jim Jones was a wonderful guy. He wasn't. He was horrible. But he was able to inspire people. And that's what Dr. Abernathy's trying to get at in his book. What is this quality that some people
Mm-hmm.
have and some people don't? It's like every 4 years when you have your presidential election, you have somebody who goes and the country sort of gets behind him. And then there's somebody else who might have a very similar message, and they get two delegates to the convention. And you wonder, why does this guy have two, or this lady have two, and this
Mm-hmm.
lady has 4,000? What's the difference? And what leadership quality does that person have?
So true, so true. Gonna go back a little bit, and we're talking about where he has that award. You say, Pulitzer. Help me say it. Hopefully, I said
Pulitzer
it.
Prize. His
Yes.
Pulitzer Prize for his first one of his first books.
Now we're not talking about her yet, but Daphne um, Tisdale. We're going to see her a little bit in the story, but because of his accolades, Dr. Abernathy's accolades, he can get this advance. to do his book, but he refused to do it because he said he's financially set and he don't want to hold anything, because what if he dies because of the
Yeah.
diagnosis and what he wants to do? Let's talk about that part of it, when he declines that advance to do this book and he wants to kind of just go out there without the advance.
He's never accepted an advance on any of his books because he believes that he doesn't believe in taking money until you do the job. He has very rigid morals and beliefs and standards that he holds himself to. And he says, well, what if I die and I didn't finish the book? I'll go to my grave a thief, you know? And she's trying to explain to him, no, that's standard. That's how we do things. And he doesn't want it and he refuses it. But yeah, he follows these rules and this way of doing things. And as you get deeper into it and you learn more about Daphne and Dr. Abernathy and their relationship, that has he didn't just meet her when we opened the book. They've known each other for years. And she was his editor and publisher for years, editor mostly. Um and she works for the publishing company. She's a big executive and an editor with that publishing company that does his books.
Can you hear me? Did you freeze?
No, I can hear you.
Okay, good. I was looking at you. Okay, so I don't want to get too deep into her yet because we'll get with her, but I wanted to just give a glimpse of when he was talking about that. So we're gonna kind of hit myths and just kind of move all over, but we're gonna get there. Um, I want to go back to the ones you were talking about, the leadership. You mentioned President Woodrow Wilson, and you mentioned his wife. You said
Right.
because of her husband's sickness, and he had a stroke and he was unable to execute his duties, and so his wife kind of uh, was there for him. How do you see that? I'm not saying that that's in your wheelhouse, but just putting it in the book, it kind of made me think about even now today, the first ladies that are alongside their husbands. I can imagine, and this is the only way I can look at this, and I don't have to say that it's correct, but I'm looking at it this way. Uh, as me being a military wife, and my husband, when he goes out to sea, I have to handle everything when he's gone. So
Right.
I'm kind of like in his proxy, if you will. And there might be a far-fetched similarity, but that's the only way I can see that, with the first ladies being alongside of them. What if the husband gets sick? And I'm sure she sees what he does and the things he have to do. And so with Woodrow Wilson, his wife, she made sure that those matters that were important, that she was there to listen in on what those things was doing and kind of carry out the things that are important. So highlighting that, how important was it to highlight that as a
Well,
leadership role?
it was very important because you see with Edith Wilson, what happened was she actually became she wasn't the president, but she protected him and shielded him from even his cabinet officials. She would only allow what information, she was the filter. Nothing got to him, and no one really knew how severely he was, afflicted by this stroke that he had. Um, but she controlled everything. And as a result, he had been an advocate of the Treaty of Versailles after World War One and the League of Nations. And as it turned out, because he couldn't go out there and push those things for the American people, they never got the United States never approved either one of those things. And that's because he had the stroke and he was away and she didn't view those as important things. And she was basically one of the things that she did as a result of her, she was the first lady to travel outside of the United States. And she expanded the role for future first ladies to be more active and to do things other than, make cookies or whatever, or host parties. That's what they used to do. But
Sure.
there were, I mean, Dolly Madison, when the British burned the White House during the War of 1812, Dolly Madison saved a lot of artwork and important documents and things from the White House. So, there were other first ladies who played roles. They just weren't that well known. But with Edith Wilson, she was sort of not the president, but more like a steward who, she kind of ran things. She did run things. And that's a little known fact. So he wrote about her leadership and her assuming that role. And again, you could criticize it because by her shielding certain things, there were things that Woodrow Wilson would have wanted that didn't get accomplished,
Hmm.
because if she had allowed the vice president to take over and people to know, today this couldn't happen because everyone would know. They would know they hadn't seen the president in 6 weeks. You
That's
know,
true.
I mean, now, the book that came out about President Biden and how his decline was, hidden from everybody. That was done to a certain level, but eventually that came out. With Woodrow, no one knew that he had. They knew he was ill, but they didn't know that he had a stroke and was almost incapable of walking and doing. I'm not sure how deeply his speech was afflicted, but he suffered a major stroke.
Hmm. So
So,
true. Now we're gonna go like a little heads up. I call it with Daphne Tisdale. And you mentioned about they had somewhat of a relationship or whatever, but
well,
uh
you'll
I,
see.
huh?
I said, you'll see.
Yes, I seen a little glimpse of that. It was alluding to that, as I was
Right.
reading. And so he had to make this phone call. He had already talked to his son, his daughter, Prescott, as well as Bill, and talked to his doctor, Tidrow. Dr. Tidrow, he spoke with him. And then here's the thing, well, he's now writing, and we're going to talk about Kirsten a little bit later, but he's now writing, and he has to tell Daphne about
Yeah.
what's going on. So Daphne, once he get on the phone, he kind of talks to her. I like the way when there is something sad, the immediate response is a laughter. I mean, that's how you work us up when we see some sad happening with Dr. Abernathy, and then next thing there's a smile. So I like that when he talked to Daphne, he had to tell her about his diagnosis, stage 4 cancer, and he didn't want to waste her time. And he told her, the treatment that they kind of looking at is radiation. They're looking at possible surgery or chemo, and so the expectation is 3 years. So he's telling her all that. She's sobbing, and then he kind of talks to her and he tells her, pretty much, don't bawl your eyes out. I'm gonna be okay. And he says something very comical when he talks to her, and I like that how he talked to her and he thought about that process. I want to do this book, but as a reader, how important was that to tell her about the book, about his health care, what he has to do, and this book? How important was that
Well,
to the both of them?
it's very important, but you'll see. I'll tease it. There's a lot more to the relationship between Dr. Abernathy and Daphne that will come out as we get into it. But initially, he didn't want to tell her. He didn't want to tell her. He wasn't going to tell her about his diagnosis, and then he couldn't keep it from her. So then he told her, and obviously she's very upset because there are feelings there, professional and personal. And he basically says, "Well, don't worry, I'll get the book done." And she says, I don't care about the book at all." And he's like, "Well, don't say that. They'll walk you out. You know, your bosses will fire you." And he's, you know, and then because when she first gets on the phone with him, she's like, "Oh, are you going to finally come down to New York so I can take you out to dinner?" And then after he tells her about his diagnosis, he says, "Yeah, I don't think this gets you out of taking me to dinner. I'm still going to come down." He says, "But with this condition, I eat like a 12-year-old girl, so you're not going to have to spend a lot of. I'll eat chicken fingers or something."
Chicken fingers and macaroni. That's the comical.
Yeah,
That's what I'm saying. Before that, you get the diagnosis. They talk. She's almost in, ready to cry, and he says he's going to order from the kids menu. I was like it. I said, you know exactly as a writer when to put that sob moment as well as a laughter to
right.
kind of get us. Okay, come on, just wake up. Let's continue on with the story. And so I really like how you did that in that. So like I say, it's a lot to talk about in here. And then we see um, when he talks to, there's a lot of things that I've seen as a reader as I went on more of Kristen Mead's. It's a lot of stuff that happened to her. One
Oh
of the
yeah.
things, Lester Dulap, as y'all call, yeah, as they call him, I realized in the story how much you get to see a little bit more how manipulating the parents were. They wanted him to graduate, they wanted all these things, and it's because of their prestigious wealth, but it's not really because that he want this. And then to see, how Dr. Abernathy kind of unfolded a little bit in one side of the story. But I like when she came by his house and um he didn't have really much for her to do, but he wanted her to be there. And like you said before, we talked about how he look at her and see her as a woman and different things like that. But then I get to hear it feels like that he owes her. And
Yeah.
and also you'll see a little bit more of the owing comes in the point of some mistake that he could have made that she stopped that would have cost him, a great deal of shame. So with that, I see a little bit of that he feels like he owes to that. And I don't want to give this part away, but there's so much more that we'll see that Kirsten and, they got married, and there's one thing that happened in the relationship.
Oh
It was a spiraling down sort of thing. And we see how the family, his family, how they just wanted their son to be in a good light, to graduate, to do all these things, but it really cost her a lot. This
yeah.
beautiful girl, and she gets entangled with him and get entangled in some more stuff that the readers would see. And I was like, no, oh, oh.
Yeah, basically her life goes down precipitously from where it was. Um, I mean, she was the bright and shining star of the academics, and she was the top student. And Lowell and they both had big plans for her. And he doesn't in any way belittle what she's doing for a living, working as a CNA. He has tremendous respect for that. But it's, he considers what could have happened and what did happen as a result of her, as you said, entanglement with Lester.
Yes.
And Lester's parents, at one point, you'll see there, and again, I'm not giving away part of the story, but at one point, Lowell says that most women carry a baby for 9 months. Lester's mother carried him for 40 years. And, I mean, he
Can't
just,
wait to get to that one. Yes, yes, yes. But then we see Kirsten comes back. And this is the part I like when she comes back again to his house, because there's another time that she came back and he kind of talked to her, and it's an update. And now it's 20 years now, and
right.
and you see that she updates him. He see her more than just a young girl. She could have been a prospect of his, but he didn't want that. He wanted student to be in the student lane. He wanted to separate all those things,
Oh,
and he just never would see that happening. But he kind of encourages her or give her affirmation, if you will, when he talks about it. And she's upstate him. She say, "I never graduated. I'm doing CNA right now." And it was almost like he wanted to compensate her in some kind of way to me as a reader to see her get that supplement income that she needed. But then when he told her what he wanted to do, look at his work, because he's seen her that she is one of the top notch, writers, and she
right.
can look that out. And at one moment, I thought, as a reader, I thought he would say, "Well, here, I'm going to pay you this much." She's like, "Oh, you don't have to pay me." He said, "No, I'm not going to pay you. I just want you to
No,
do this." And so I like the way you did that, where he's seeing her and he saw that she had a lot of opportunity ahead of her.
right.
What was that like for you as the writer to show a lot about, to give really, Kirsten is more of she's not a spotlight to me in there, but she gets a big spotlight just from knowing Dr. Abernathy in the book. You see big spotlights of her.
Oh yeah. Well, again, I don't want to give too much away, but Dr. Abernathy, he tells her, he asks her to help him with his work on the leadership book and to look things over, and he gives her a chapter to look at, and he wants her and says, "I want you to critique it, and I don't want you to just say, oh, it's nice. That's not," he said, "if I wanted that, I'd give it to my son-in-law, you know but I want you to just get in there, and I want you to really critique it." And she's like, "Well, I haven't done this. I'm a CNA. What do I know?" And he says, "You didn't lose your mind. You didn't lose your ability to think, and you were one of the most perceptive um, students I ever had." And he talked about, they used to do this thing where the students would look at each other's papers, and her comments were almost as good and in depth as his were. And he talks about how when he was her professor years and years ago, he had her look at one of the books he was writing at the time, and she caught something in there that would have proven to be somewhat embarrassing, the mistake that was in there. And he always remembered that, and he respected that. And he's like, "You don't lose that. Just because you're not working as a teacher or a professor somewhere doesn't mean you don't have a mind, and you don't have a mind for history and writing, because you do." And so he gives her respect, and he treats her, he doesn't treat her like a lot of, you know, extremely well educated people can sometimes look down on people who don't have the degree. Dr. Abernathy never does that. He looks at everybody as, having a certain level of him. It's what you do and what you're capable of, not the degrees you have or anything else, even though he has them. Like the fellow, well, I don't know if you've gotten to him yet, but the man who owns the restaurant that he goes to, his friend, Mr. Breckenridge, he they're very good friends. And he owns the restaurant. And so he's friends with a lot of different people, and he treats people with respect. You're mute.
I did get a chance to meet him. I'm gonna reset right now. Resetting, and hello to you guys out there. Our guest tonight is Timothy Kabel, and we're reading his book, The Sea Change of Dr. Abernathy. Could you show the book, please? Thank you, thank you. I got this blur on, I won't be able to see it. And hello to you, Queenie Clem. Hey, hey, hey. To you, thank you for coming in. Sometimes we cannot see this. I'm looking on my phone, and sometimes that's dark. Thank you guys for being in. Thank you, those who do replay and replay time. This is our day 3, and we thank you guys for being here. Also, when he talked to her, like you said, he doesn't mean that she's not Dr. Abernathy. When he talks to Kirsten, he said that she has a good opportunity and that she's sharp and she's intelligent. And I like the way he spoke to her about that. And we get a little bit further, and um, I like how things are going when he talks about the doctor. We also will meet his grandchildren.
Right.
And so you tell us about that. He talks about his care, and there's a lot of funny things going on when he talks about his care. He is just so hilarious. But I like the way he had them to go, his children, and as well as his brother Prescott, to that appointment that they
Right.
talk about. And on that appointment, uh, he seems to be very sarcastic, but really he's being very honest with himself, Dr. Abernathy. And he talks about the care. You know, I know you have a plan for me, but the ultimate thing is I'm dying. What does it matter? You know,
Yeah.
and he tells him about the care that he do. He is just hilarious to me. And we see that. It's like Doc, Dr. Tidrow has a plan for you, but then I know that your plan may work, but let's just kind of either it's going to advance my death or it's going to stabilize. And so he
Right.
seems like to me he want to be in a stabilizing
Right.
that factor. So let's talk about that.
Well, he makes it very clear when he meets when he goes to meet with Dr. Tidrow and he brings his brother and his children with him, Felicity, Hank, and Prescott, and because he wants them involved, they're not going to make the decision. He's going to make the decision, but he wants
Hmm.
them involved. As long as he's alive, he'll make the decisions. Um, but what he's doing when he's there and he talks to Dr. Tidrow, he makes it very clear he doesn't want these drastic measures taken, and he doesn't want to be, as he says, cut apart piece by piece
Hmm.
and wake up from some surgery and find out, well, they removed his leg and his lung and and everything else. And he's like, I don't want that. He said, I want something that's going to allow me to, if it can slow down the progress of the disease and make the quality of my life better,
Hmm.
then I'm all for it. But if it's just these experimental things that are going to be worse and I'm lying in bed and I can't do anything because you've cut me up, I don't want to do that. And he makes that clear. He'll try certain things. He'll go to a certain point, but he's not going further than that.
Hmm.
Uh, and and so he and Dr. Tidrow are sort of on the same page now, in the treatment of how they're going to proceed with treating the disease and so forth. And then they discuss what you know what does he live alone and is he going to need help.
Yeah, yeah.
And Dr. Abernathy explains to him how he just acquired these two cats. And Dr. Tidrow comments on how there have been studies that having pets can actually be very helpful to people who are fighting a disease or sick or in a terminal situation. And I did a lot of research on that as I wrote the book, and that's very true. And even his daughter says, yeah, she did on her news show, she did a program of that, about that, where they have the animals, the therapy dogs and cats, mostly dogs, going into the hospitals, um, and meeting with the patients and how it helps with the healing process and the recovery process. So Dr. Tidrow's on board with that. But then they also talk about, well, he may need somebody as he goes through this treatment. He may need somebody to be there, not that he needs help with, showering and things like that, because at this point
Mhm.
he doesn't. But what if he's just worn out from the chemotherapy or whatever treatment he has that day, and he just doesn't feel like cooking dinner or doing something? He needs to have somebody there to do it. Um, so right now he's considering at some point bringing on somebody to be that caretaker type person.
Yes, and also I wanted to ask you, still in this same moment that we're speaking of, is this moment of showing how Dr. Abernathy even want more years added to his life. And so I wanted to ask you as a writer, do we think more about what we all can do when we're toward the ends of our life? And sometimes do we take for granted how much time when we don't know our diagnosis, when we don't see a health scare, that we kind of procrastinate? Why was it so important to show those views in there?
Well, yeah, and it is important because we never know how much time we have. And at one point, I'm not sure how far into the book this is, but Dr. Abernathy makes the comment, look, you know what? They say I have 2 to 3 years. He said, but what if I
Yes.
go outside and get hit by a bus tomorrow? Then that looks like a long time, the 2 to 3 years. He's like, I have to take the time that I have and make the most of it. And that's what he does. He doesn't want to sit down and just, be depressed and feel sorry for himself. He doesn't do that, and he
No,
refuses to do that.
he
But
does.
he's got things he wants to accomplish, and he wants to enjoy and get the most out of whatever life he has left.
Mm-hmm.
And he doesn't sugarcoat things. He describes it as either going to the bone orchard or croaking or, or whatever term he uses. You know, he's not overly delicate about things like that. And
Mm-hmm.
at one point, Felicity asks him not to use those terms in front of her youngest child because she's running around cooking bone orchard.
Now you introduce us to his grandchildren. You have Lucille. She named her daughter after, the wife, Lucille, and Amos, and I'm trying to remember
Tammy.
Tammy. Yes. And so now Tammy is 14. So 14, 7, and I'm trying to think of the other one ages. In doing that, I like the way Amos mentioned whether I'm going to see what Tammy said, but with Amos mentioning that he has a sport and he wants his grandfather there, you see that, and then you see the daughter who is now 14 and haven't had him in there all those years. So what I'm getting at is that I like the way you didn't just say, "Hey, that's grandfather," and we just kind of embrace them. So it leads me to believe, especially as Tammy being 14, that some of her mom's emotion, I'm not saying that she really passed it down, but I'm sure she's seen her mother, wanted her grandfather sometime in her life. Where's grandma? Where's grandpa? And there, I believe as a reader that there wasn't really no explanation because of Tammy just kind of paused. But then as mother connects with her father, as she get a relationship, Felicity gets more of a close, somewhat of a close relationship. And I can see both of those where the daughter is now casually talking and talks about history, which sparks something to the grandfather. So you got the history sparking, and also you have the sports of the both grandchildren saying that kind of, I like the way you kind of put them together on those little tidbits of things versus he come to the grandfather and then there's nothing there to embrace. So I like the way you did that.
Well, thank you.
Yeah. So what was your idea? Or what was you wanted to the readers to catch hold of in that
Well,
moment of writing
I
that?
mean, they do live near each other and they do see each other, but Felicity has basically held her father kind of at an arm's length for years. he's, it's not that the grandchildren don't know him, they do, but she's never invited him to go to their sporting events. And as he says at one point, well, that's on me too, because those events are open to the
Right.
public and I'm a member of the public. I could have gone.
Yes, I
And he
love that.
says, at this point, it doesn't matter that you didn't invite me or I didn't go. I'm here now and I'm going
Yeah,
to be here now. And I want to go see these things and I want to participate and I want family dinners every Sunday. And I want to have us close for as long as I can be. But he doesn't, certainly, he makes it very clear we're not going to tell the kids,
right,
you know, because that's not appropriate in his mind. That's not something you tell kids.
right.
He goes, they're just getting me back in their life. I don't want them sitting there looking at the calendar thinking I'm going to drop dead next week.
See, now I know where Abernathy get it from. You,
Well,
you,
yeah. So
you know exactly. You know exactly how to do it. Uh,
yeah, he's,
oh my goodness. And
and then,
I'm looking at going back a little bit with the conversation with. Are you still there?
yes, I'm here.
Okay, so I'm looking at the conversation with Dr. Tidrell and Dr. Abernathy, how he told his position and where he was standing. We kind of talked about it a little bit. No matter what we do, he said he'd still be dying, and so it was like he said that he was avoiding the mission
Yeah,
rather than securing the victory, and everything's aggressive with this treatment. This is what Dr. Abernathy looking at now.
yeah,
And when you mentioned about the convalescent home and stuff, there's some things that he's like, hey, whoa, 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 you're pushing me far ahead of my plan.
right.
So
Yeah, he
how
wants to know, are we going to go, are we looking to just contain it like a military operation, or are we going to just try to totally destroy it, the
mhm,
cancer? And he realizes that they can't because it's in his system and it's advanced. It's at stage 4. So they're working mostly they're going to do some procedures that will sort of control the spread of the cancer and also do things to sort of remove some of those tumors from inside his stomach so that he can eat better and eat a normal sized meal and maybe not have that level of discomfort. So, and that's what he's going to do. But and they all agree sort of on the treatment plan. And then meanwhile, as you saw, he has to take Fern for her cancer treatments.
yes, I wanted to get a little glimpse of that. And we talked about Dr. Ludwig. Is that how you say
Yes,
Ludwig?
Dr. Ludwig.
Dr. Ludwig, I like that moment. We get to see another fur friend. And here we go again with Fern leading the way, Miss
Oh yeah.
Prestigious Fern leading the way, and how Dr. Ludwig say, hey, they're friends.
Yeah.
not
What
only not only does he have two fur friends already, but there may be an additional friend that comes home with him.
Yeah. Well, basically, what happens is Dr. Abernathy, at one point, I don't know if you've gotten to this point yet, but at one point, when he's preparing to go to take Fern to treatment, um, he doesn't eat breakfast because Fern can't eat breakfast and he doesn't want to eat in front of her. And then he's taking her to the vet. And as he walks by the hall, he sees himself in the mirror and he says, Abernathy, what have you become? You know,
Yes.
I mean, you're now this. And he said, I never thought I would be the type of guy who wouldn't eat breakfast because he didn't want his cat to feel bad. And,
That was
and
so
so it's changing him in that way, or not necessarily changing, but revealing him to be this type of person. and he takes Fern for her chemotherapy, and she has to be there.
Mhm.
But he calls the vet clinic about 12 times or 5 or 6 times, checking up on her. And they're like, we said we'd call you when she was done, but he's worried. So he leaves Clausewitz, he locks him up in the bedroom so he doesn't get, destroy anything. And then he goes, and when he goes to pick up Fern, she's in the room there, the treatment room, and she's lying on the ground next to Elmer. And Elmer now is, and he's Dr. Abernathy's looking, and I'll just say Elmer is a dachshund in a wheelchair. And he said he looks like Ben-Hur, with the little chariot. And he
Yeah.
says, what's going on with him? And so he says he's he's here because he has arthritis. And he said, he's an and he said, oh, well, where are his owners? And he said, he's an owner surrender. And so Dr. Abernathy says, what does that mean? They were arrested for something and they
Yes.
had to surrender? And he says, no, no, no. What it means is they didn't want him anymore because they're a young couple and they're, on the go all the time, and they don't want to be saddled with a dog in a wheelchair. And so he says, well, what's going to happen? And he says, well, we'll never put him to sleep or anything like that. He'll just live here in the vet clinic unless he finds a home. So meanwhile, Fern is just staring at Dr. Abernathy lying next to Elmer. And 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 he's looking at her and he's like, don't do this. And then finally he says, Dr. Ludwig, I think my cat wants a pet. So now he's in a situation where he may or may not wind up leaving the clinic with not only Fern and having Clausewitz at home, but he may be leaving with Elmer as well.
Yeah, that was beautiful. Here we go again. History kind of repeats itself, especially when he got firm, you know. So we
Right,
see those things and those questions that he asked, and here again we see Fur fur friend and human compassion, and then also the compassion of the fur friends toward Dr. Abernathy, because there's a lot of things that unfold there to give you that humanistic type of feel
right,
between fur friend and the human. So, how important was that for you to show? Not only he has a diagnosis, not only is he caring for two cats, and then caring about the care of Fern. So it kind of, to me as a reader, kind of just takes his mind again off of himself.
right. And he won't admit it, but he's a very soft, caring guy. And and Elmer is just this goofy little dog who, he's lovable. He's, he's stuck in the vet clinic, basically.
Hmm.
And he's very attached to Fern. And so Dr. Abernathy, his empathy or sympathy for the dog is heightened. And as he's looking at him and he's thinking, oh, you know, and let's put it this way, Dr. Abernathy doesn't do anything that he doesn't want to do.
Right.
So
Hmm.
he doesn't feel put upon if he does take the dog home. He doesn't feel bad about it or that he shouldn't. He doesn't regret anything like that. He thinks it's something he should do. And you'll see that, like with Fern and her relationship with Elmer, when he goes in there and he sees this little goofy dog in the wheelchair, and it's a situation where it sort of tugs at his heartstrings, and he thinks, well, why not, you know and
I got a chance to kind of see that what's going on. I really like what was going on in that scene. And let's see. Oh, a time is creeping on us. Wow. So we get a from the first chapter, like I say, I'm at the eighth, and they are plush chapters. So you get to see a good feel of this. I guess I want to call it production or whatever. It just beautifully seen. That could go to screen, but I don't know if you wrote it like a screenplay, but it could go to screen. I really enjoyed that. I don't know if you ever thought about either one, even, either one of the books, but it could go to screen and
Yeah, I
it's
have thought about that,
beautiful.
and I'd
Yeah.
certainly be open to it. A lot of
Hmm.
people who've read it have told me that both of them would lend themselves to that.
See, it's not just me.
No, no, lots
Thank
of
you.
people.
Yeah, it's a beautiful story. And so with that from chapter 1 until 7, you see a lot of things in there. You see forgiveness, you see compassion of a professor who, like I said before, who in the beginning, as you say, that he's not one for having a pity party for himself, but you see these things unfold and how he goes back before he gets expire, as he say, to get those things right before he go on. And so why was it important? Me as a reader, I thought maybe, and we may have talked about this before, maybe he wants things together so that he can see it. He don't know if it's going to stay together all that moment once he, as he said, expires. He want that family bonding and that family to be cohesive before he leaves. What was the your, as an author, in writing that view through those lens?
Well, exactly. He wants to get things as close to being right as he can, whatever he can do. And he wants a relationship with his kids. He doesn't want to die estranged or in a strained relationship with his
Yeah.
kids. And you'll see that there are other relationships that he has that are somewhat strained, and he doesn't want that. And he also, I mean, this is a man who basically kept his mouth shut and didn't tell the reality of
Mm-hmm.
what happened in his marriage because he didn't want to sully the reputation of his deceased ex-wife. He took the blows, so to speak, and the his daughter being frigid toward him because he didn't feel it was his place to do that. But now that's all changed because his time is limited and he wants to get the most out of the relationship with his daughter, his grandchildren, his son. So he wants to do that, and it's very important to him. He doesn't want to leave with things unfinished.
Yeah. Not even his book.
No,
Not even his book. We'll see
nope.
more in there. So, um, give us a takeaway. We're at that time, and what would you like? Because this is the part two. This is the ending, and I know you'll be back again with your other books. And this is a sweet, sweet moment. When they get to day three, it's like, oh, it's over. But what do you want the folks that seen, let's see, from day one to this day, to walk away with? And especially, what is the expectation of a Timothy Cable book?
Well, in this book, I mean, when people look at it, and I tell them, well, it's about a professor who's on page one gets a diagnosis of terminal cancer. Oh, oh God, I don't want to read that. It'll be depressing. But I can assure you, and everyone, it is not depressing. Um, it's because it's a person who gets horrible news and he doesn't wallow in self pity. What he does is he tries to make it as rich and full a life, not only for himself, but for those
Mm-hmm.
in his little orbit as he possibly can. And that's what he does. And you'll see he doesn't say, oh, geez, I'm not going to take this sick cat because I'm sick and I don't want to worry about that because I'll be worrying about myself. He winds up taking Fern with him. And then, other other things happen. And you'll see as you get deeper in, it's about doing things and being involved and playing a role for the people in his life and his little circle that he can. And then it goes back to when he was a professor and the image that the university has of him,
Mm-hmm.
and that he's basically a revered teacher. And that's something that it's a little difficult for him to accept that sometimes because he does what he thinks is the right thing to do. And he likes to be, as sick as he may be or will be, if there's somebody else who's down or has something, he
Mm-hmm.
prefers to help them. And that gives him strength to face what he has to face.
And that is so true because when we do that and we think about others and pray for others, it allows us to move forward because we're not so focused on our demise or what, you know, when you focus on that, like I said, like um when you get a diagnosis, you can live while living instead of dying while living, you
Right.
know. And so we've spoken about that before because when you die while living, I think it kind of, I think as a reader, I think this is what Dr. Abernathy didn't want to look at because the more and more you focus on your diagnosis and how less time you have, why not maximize what you can do while you can do it, you know?
Exactly.
hmm And so we
Yeah,
get
he
to
rolls up
focus on
his
that.
sleeves and wades right in and you know, he's working on his book. He's trying to knock out as many chapters as he can. And he even tells Daphne, I finished 5 chapters and 5 essays, and I'm sending those to you. And
hmm
so, but yeah, it's this, basically the readers. If you want an uplifting story with a lot of layers to it and some humor in a tough situation,
Yes.
I think you'll be satisfied.
And you will. It's a plush story, guys. And thank you again for being here, Timothy.
Thank
As
you.
I say, I enjoy your book. I can't wait to the next one. And you said you have some already ready, set to go, but you just haven't pitched it or you haven't put it out there. So I'm definitely a fan of your work. I really enjoy it. And when you write a book, you give us a plush book, you know, like 300 plus.
Oh yeah.
You will. It's a plush book. And it's after I'm scoring based off the first book I read, you're not left with what's next. You see that's there and you want something from you again, but you're not left with, how sometimes there's a cliffhanger, there's different things, and you like, that's it. And see,
Yeah.
like it take you guys, I don't know, maybe a year or two when we as readers we read that in maybe 2 or 3 hours, and you've spent years just doing that.
Right.
And sometimes we do. So with that one, I was enjoying that along with doing other shows and stuff. So it took me a moment, but it's such a good story.
Well, thank
And
you.
that's what I do. I enjoy that. So I'm not going to keep you too much longer. Thank you to your beautiful wife for having you here and your lovely cats or cat.
I have
Thank you for
multiple
bringing them.
cats.
Oh, you have. You
Yeah,
have.
but the one I do have a Maine Coon cat, just like Dr. Abernathy.
That's the one you sent me the picture of.
Yes, yes. And
Like I say again, Timothy, that's a lion. It's not a cat.
well, I had a dog sit for my daughter's dog today, and the dog was so intimidated by the cat that she wouldn't leave the kitchen. She stayed in the kitchen all day.
Wow.
And he didn't go after her, he just stared at her.
And when I seen him staring on the picture, I said, that's a lion. You say he was only what, one?
Yeah, he just turned 1 in October.
Oh my
Yeah.
goodness.
and he's about 20 pounds.
That's a big lion.
Yeah,
Maybe you
he's
could post it in there. But I'm gonna let us go ahead. I enjoyed this. This has been a great day 3. Looking forward to your next book. Tell us what you got coming up. What you're gonna
well,
what's next?
I
And where can they reach you?
I have a Western that I'm trying to get published now. It's called The Three Wives of Clancy Rasmussen. And I've written actually a sequel to that called The Winds of Retribution. And those are 2 Westerns set in the late 1800s in the Wyoming area. And I just wrote one that I started on September 7th, and I'm finishing it tonight or tomorrow. That's about a 350 pager. And that one is called The Butcher of Punxsutawney, and it's about a heavyweight boxer from the 1980s who's cheated out of the championship and comes back 25 years later as a trainer.
Whoa.
So, and his name is Stanislaw Lewandowski,
Mm.
and he runs a meat business, which is why he's called the Butcher of Punxsutawney.
Will we get a little Rocky feel?
Somewhat,
Sylvester
but
Stallone.
he's this guy, I mean, Rocky was sort of a down and out fighter. This guy was really, really good. He was considered to be the best, and he was
Wow.
just cheated out of the champion. And you'll see what happens. But there is a character in there that I based on Howard Cosell,
Oh my
who
goodness.
calls the fights. And but Stanislaw Lewandowski is he's a guy who's been through the ringer. He's lost everything, and he refers to himself as the champion who never was.
Wow. I look
So
forward to that. I look forward to
thank
that. I am so excited and looking forward to that. You have an amazing night. What can they reach you at? What folks can reach you at?
well, I mean, people can email me. That's fine. Timothy Kabel 767 at gmail.com. And I'm also on, if they go on the Page Publishing, they have a site there for the book.
Awesome. I look forward to more. Can't wait to finish it. We'll do a review. You have an amazing night. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Good night.
Bye.
Thank you guys for being here again. Ellen Sutter of ESP Presents and ESP Book Chats, where we bring page turners your way. Thank you guys for being here once again. Those who do replay, and those who are in real time. This will also be uploaded to YouTube. If you guys are on YouTube, I'll put that link out there as well. You guys have an amazing night. Thank you for being here. Also, if you are an author and you want to be on this show, do email me at mrssuds@yahoo.com. We also have our Tuesday show that's going to come up, our Scout Out Shout Out. We used to have it for free. Now it's $35. You submit your synopsis. You'll see something going around pretty soon. And we have our December is open up. We have 2 shows. November, we'll be having those shows and we'll put it out there. So we have 2 shows that way we're going to go to November. So you guys stay tuned. Keep it locked to ESP Presents, and I will update you guys on the social media. Thank you guys again for being here. Thank you for your time, your data. Thank you for sharing. And you guys have a wonderful night. Good night. Bye-bye.